Hello, Skillets! Welcome back to Cast Iron, the podcast all about rock and metal. I am Lewis Clark from Sega Driven and other things on the internet, and I'm joined, as usual, by Alan Williamson, my good friend. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm Australian now.
You are indeed! Well, congratulations on your citizenship, mate.
We have to... I know on the website we have Lewis the English one and Alan the Irish one, so we could technically write the Australian one now.
Yeah, you could.
That's not going to help anyone identify us, which is the main reason we've got the nationalities in there. It's not because you're a massive English patriot or anything.
No.
But yes, after 5 years of living in Australia, I got my citizenship certificate today.
Fantastic stuff.
So what if people asked me, it'd be good to know, you do not pledge allegiance to the Queen.
Okay.
And in Australia, you can have dual nationality. So I'm now British Australian. And there was controversy at the citizenship ceremony because they get the list of countries from Home Affairs. I'll text you the program.
Okay.
But they had flags of all the countries, and they had England, Northern Ireland, and United Kingdom. And I was like, hold on now, this is controversial. Because it said that on the ceremony sheet that's where I was from, but I just put UK, I think, on the forms, because that's technically what your political affiliations aside, right? That is technically the right answer. So, but I texted my friend. I was like, where would United Kingdom have been if not one of the constituent countries? Was there someone from Gibraltar? I don't know. Jersey?
Yeah. That's a fair point. No, that totally.
So that's done. And I'm now officially an Australian citizen. And as I told you before the show started, I celebrated by stuffing my face with pies.
What? That's a celebration as far as I'm concerned. Excellent stuff. Oh, mate. Well, I'm really happy for you. I'm glad it's all settled and sorted now. And yeah, it's pretty strange to think of you as an Australian, but you have been there for 5 years now.
It will it will take a while for the accent to kick in, if ever. I don't think.
I know you throw the odd word here and there. You've definitely taught me some slang, but you haven't gone full Aussie yet, unfortunately.
No, not yet. So what have you been listening to? And have you changed nationalities? I should probably ask you up front. Are you still of the same nationality?
I am indeed of the same nationality, and all the stuff I've been listening to recently is heavily British. Not by choice; it was just the way things was. So there's a sort of, I don't know, techie emo band I really like called Press to Miko. They released an album last year called Transmute, which has been on my to get for quite a while, and they run a sale over the summer, so I bought that and their last album, which I also didn't have, and they're still fantastic, and I would highly recommend them. When I say emo, it's very just sort of like sugary vocals, I suppose, is the thing with that. The music itself is quite catchy but abrasive and quite techy, so I would highly recommend that if that sounds interesting. I would liken them probably the most to Ruben, if you've ever listened to Ruben. They probably sound the most like that. And I've also listened to a load of Bowie because I found some in a charity shop that I didn't have. Slowly building the full Bowie collection because, I very much like what he does. I found Black Star, which was the last album.
Oh, it's good. It's good.
I really enjoy, actually. It's nice and weird and out there and a bit spacey, and his vocal performance is still very good.
It's very Scott Walker-y. And if you ever listen to Scott Walker, but
I can hear that.
David Bowie certainly has, because I watched a Scott Walker documentary once, and there's one point where David Bowie just goes, "Scott Walker, bloody hell!" So Bowie's definitely a fan, and there's definitely a bit of that weirdness going on in Black Star.
Totally. How about you?
Oh, what haven't I been listening to? So, my probably favourite album of the year is finally out, which is the Halo Effect album, Days of the Lost, which is just straight out of Turn of the Millennium melodic death metal, and is awesome. The new Soilwork album is out. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, but Overgivenheten, it was what it looks like. And it's great, and it's a different album from them. It's a little bit more poppy, and you can hear some of the AOR Night Flight Orchestra stuff coming in, but it's still really, really good. New Machine Head album, was surprised that was actually really good.
I've heard good things.
Megadeth album
it's the best
came
one
out.
since the Blackening.
I would say New Machine Head. I don't know. It's good. It's definitely up there with everything that's not Catharsis.
Yeah.
The new Megadeth album came out yesterday, and it is really fun.
Okay.
Speaking of bands that have been up and down with their albums,
yeah, somewhat tainted for me now, unfortunately, old Megadeth, but yeah.
It's not like lyrically, it's not as cringe as Dystopia, and I just found Dystopia a bit too alt-righty. But the new one's pretty good, and if nothing else, the guitars are excellent. And Dave's not had an easy time. The one thing I haven't listened to is the new Blind Guardian, which also came out yesterday. I haven't listened to it yet.
Oh, I didn't even realise that happened.
Yeah,
I've been listening to the singles, but I didn't realise the album was out.
And there's a new King's X album out, what I haven't listened to yet. The Disappointment of the Year also came out, which is the new Amon Amarth album, which sucks.
Yeah, I've heard.
It's got a good song called Heidrun about a goat. That's about it. We're not here to talk about what's new. We're here to talk about what is very, very old, and the oldest album that we have ever covered on the show.
Oh my god, it is, isn't it? Wow. Mm-hmm. I didn't realise that, actually. That's quite impressive.
1 year before Power Slave.
There we go. Right, well, here's my intro for this, because I had a little thing I wanted to rehearse. So, set your washing machine to high, and we got to get that tiger's stripes clean. That's right, we're listening to Holy Diver by Dio.
Going to launch a washing powder brand called Midnight Sea.
That would be amazing. Right then, so Dio, what's your familiarity with Dio? What sort of experience have you had with him in the past?
Honestly, not a huge amount. So I had listened to off this album. I had heard Holy Diver and I'd heard Rainbow in the Dark, and I had listened to Heaven and Hell. The album, not the band. And for other listeners who may be unfamiliar with him, Ronnie James Dio, or as he was born, Ronald James Panavona. According to either Wikipedia or Genius, he was plucked from relative obscurity by Ritchie Blackmore, who was in Deep Purple. They formed a band called Rainbow. He had about 3 albums with Rainbow. Then he moved on to become the front man of Black Sabbath, replacing Ozzy Osbourne. And then they released an album called Heaven and Hell, which is pretty well regarded in the Sabbath canon. They had another Sabbath album after that. I think it was Mob Rules. Then he left with the drummer Vinny Appice to form his eponymous band Dio. So the first album from Dio is Holy Diver. That's what we're listening to today. And as I said, this is 1983. This is the oldest album we featured in Cast Iron, 1 year before Power Slave, which is the first album. And this is probably, I'd describe it as classic heavy metal in the vein of Black Sabbath. It's basically really heavy hard rock that owes a lot to bands like Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple.
Yeah, no, totally. I think as well, you mentioned as well, like Heaven and Hell, the Black Sabbath album being quite, well regarded. I don't know whether that is a little bit of like retrospective kind of, changing things in hindsight. Because for me, growing up, Dio, I don't know if it was a case that he wasn't liked, but it was more a case of like the Dio canon of Black Sabbath stuff was very much looked down as inferior. It was like, if it's not Ozzy, it's not Black Sabbath for a lot of people. And I feel like since his passing, people have definitely looked back on Dio's contributions to Sabbath a lot more positively, and I think it's a little bit revisionist in the way people kind of felt about it when he was alive. But like, no offense to the man, like, because he is an amazing performer, an incredible vocalist, and just an amazing songwriter. But yeah, I feel like most Dio love nowadays has come, post his death. Because I definitely feel like he was looked back upon as being a little bit more of the weaker link. Maybe not as weak as, the way people regard Tony Martin era, like Black Sabbath and stuff like that. But, and again, no offense to Tony Martin, I'm sure he's a great man. But, it's just one of those things where I think a lot of people's love and affection for Dio has come more since his passing, unfortunately. Because I definitely, remember thinking nobody really talks, too fondly about anything that isn't Aussie-fronted Black Sabbath.
Yeah, but when you listen,
until more recently.
I listened to a lot of the Aussie-fronted stuff, not all of it, but quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Paranoid, and in a way, I'm like, I can't believe we haven't covered Paranoid yet, because it to me is the quintessential Black Sabbath album. But for every really good album, like a Paranoid or a Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, there's some weird shit on there, and they are quite an inconsistent band, and it's kind of amazing they didn't all die from a drug overdose. But before Dio came along, they had a couple of weird albums like Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die that are not well regarded. Now, having said this, I don't know if you're right or not, if it's revisionist. This was, Heaven and Hell was 6 years before I was born, right? So I have no way of gauging that. But you're probably right. I think the other thing is that the late Aussie albums were so bad that perhaps contemporaneously people did think it was good, but in the grand, but as you say, it could be posthumous.
It might just be I wasn't as heavily tuned in with like metal communities and things like that at that point. But, it's just one of those things where I feel like a lot more love for Dio's back catalogue has come through posthumous events essentially. So Holy Diver then, like you say, originally released May 25th, 1983, Dio's first solo, I guess, in inverted commas, record. It uses his name, but it is a band, and it was formed as a band, and even though he is lead songwriter on a few tracks, it is quite a collaborative effort. Holy Diver, the title track itself, is kind of the one that Dio basically composed himself, and it was the first song composed for the record. He also contributed basically solo songwriting duties to track 5, Don't Talk to Strangers, as well, but we'll get to those in time. I actually only listened to this for the first time, according to Last.fm, in 2019, so I'm a fairly new fan of Dio in his back catalogue. I have since got some other bits as well. I do have the follow-up album, Last in Line, and I recently got up Lock Up the Wolves, which I found in a record shop in Penge. Which is fine. Nothing special about that one.
Dio has snuck into the latest season of Stranger Things, and there is a bit of a there's a bit of a Metallica renaissance going on now.
I know that much
because of the famous Master of Puppets scene, which comes later in the series, which is very good. But poor Dio has been hard done by. I don't know if there's any Dio tracks, but the metalhead character in it has a massive Last in Line patch on his battle jacket.
Oh, really?
So. Poor Dio was hard done by. I think a bit of Holy Diver would have been fun in the in the middle of Stranger Things.
Yeah, we're also getting a sort of retrospective documentary about Dio's life later this year as well. There are some trailers and bits up on YouTube already. It does look very good. Learned some bits from it already. The most interesting thing I learned about this record off those little snips that are available on YouTube is the cover features a chained up priest who is drowning in the water. The artist actually went and dressed up as a priest and took a photographer with him to the beach and started, dunking himself in the water and asking him to take photos of him, which he used as reference for the original piece. So it's actually based on a photo and not just, it's not completely painted from like memory or scratch.
That is a good fact. The only fact I had about the cover is Dio seemed to think it was ambiguous, and perhaps it was the priest drowning and fighting a demon. It's like, come on, man, look at this thing.
The demon himself features on a few Dio album covers. He's called Murray.
Murray,
which I recently discovered as well. Apparently nobody in Dio knew that he was called Murray until Dio mentioned it randomly during an interview. But yeah, Let's do it then. Let's dive into Holy Diver. Track 1 is Stand Up and Shout.
You've got desire, so let it out. You've got the power, stand up and shout. Shout, stand up and shout.
Now, Alan, so first impressions, obviously not the title track. How did you get on with Stand Up and Shout?
So what really interests me about this album is that every song on it reminds me of another band.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I don't mean that in a negative way. I think the versatility is really interesting. So this one to me sounds like a faster version of 2 Minutes to Midnight, and it also reminds me of early Judas Priest, so something like Exciter. The Judas Priest original, not the weird Dead or Alive 2 theme tune version of Exciter. So it has a kind of classic bluesy hard rock, new wave of British heavy metal sound. Dio's vocals are immediately apparent, but I think all the instruments are great. I love the prominent bass. And so this album features...
I've noted the bass, yeah.
This album features Vivian Campbell on guitars, who is from Northern Ireland. It's quite a lot of Northern Irish hard rock and blues guitarists. There's Vivian Campbell...
the rest of the band at this point is Vinny Appice on drums, Jimmy Bain on bass, and obviously Vivian Campbell on guitar.
So he's Vivian Campbell is from Lisburn, so kind of just up the road from where I grew up.
There you go.
But he's still going. I'm totally having a memory block here, but honestly, there are other famous guitarists from Northern Ireland. I have just totally forgotten who they were, and should have made notes. So I really enjoyed this one. I was not expecting such a fiery solo. There's some serious Van Halen levels of shredding. It's a really great opener.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of Stand Up and Shout. It's exactly what you need from an opening track. It's just a flat out rocker. Grabs you by the balls and just, doesn't let you go. Really, really good stuff. Like you said, I absolutely adore the sort of thundering bass line that is bursting through this. It's so cool. Big catchy chorus. That is going to be a thing that you're going to experience quite a lot of across this record. Dio loves him a big old chorus, and he's got the voice to absolutely power through them. Really, really catchy stuff. And that guitar solo. Just it's all the component parts of like a great opener as far as I'm concerned. Really, really good stuff. I don't know what I was expecting from this record the first time I heard it, because I think, like yourself, all I'd heard from it was Rainbow in the Dark and Holy Diver, which I suppose are more mid-paced.
Yes.
So something this quick instantly wakes you up, and I was just like, oh, okay, we're going to get some variety across this record then. That's cool. I think it's a really, really strong opener, and definitely not what I was expecting the first time I heard it, but it has become a firm favourite as far as I'm concerned.
I've got some real-time follow-up. I looked up guitarists from Northern Ireland, so I didn't embarrass myself. The other two prominent ones are Simon McBride, who's played with Deep Purple, and, of course, Gary Moore. The world-famous blues, hard rock, heavy metal guitarist who famously could play everything. He was in Thin Lizzy.
Yep.
There's actually quite a good history of Northern Irish rock guitarists. I can't think what was happening in Northern Ireland in the mid-70s that made these people want to leave, but it got us some good guitarists.
Absolutely. Right then, it seems weird to be talking about probably one of the most iconic songs in heavy metal history this early, but it's the title track. It's Holy Diver.
Gotta get away, holy diver. Got shiny diamonds, like the eyes of a cat in the black and blue. Something is coming for you. Look out, race for the morning. You can hide in the sun till you see the light. Oh, we will pray it's alright.
I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast has heard Holy Diver, and it has been a long time since I heard it, and I forgot that there's a weird superfluous introduction.
Yeah, this is the thing, isn't it? How did you hear this for the first time? Because Linking back to our Killswitch episode, I heard this via their cover for the first time.
Look, maybe it might have been the Killswitch cover of Holy Diver.
Yeah. Which I don't hate. I think Howard Jones has got a lovely voice, and he does a pretty good job of adapting the lyrics and not just screaming everything, which is really nice. So yeah, it's a fun little thing. It's not, the best Killswitch thing in their canon of recordings, but yeah. The actual original song, though, yeah, like you say, superfluous intro, big sort of synthy, sort of atmospheric thing going on, and then you get this sort of weird slide, and then we get the drums kick in straight away, sort of thing, and we get possibly one of the greatest riffs of all time. I think everybody knows. So yeah, it's going to be very difficult to talk about this song without going, well, it's perfect.
I was surprised. I was surprised because it's been so long since I've heard it, with how relatively simple it is. It's got a steady mid-tempo riff. It's got that classic rock sound, and now you have to bear with me till I get to the end of this analogy. It's kind of like a 1980s equivalent of Paramore, where you've got a band in the background while somebody performs vocal acrobatics for 5 minutes. And
I can see it.
And because I was trying to think of what other contemporary singers are there who are like this, but it really is. It is a vocalist fronted band. There aren't many other bands like that, because there's definitely other bands like Priest and Maiden that have those kind of versatile vocalists, but Dio's very much the front man in the band Dio. And I like that it's got that bluesy, it's almost like a jazzy feel to it. He starts off singing normally, and then as the song goes on, he kind of scats and interpolates, and it gradually gets more complicated. It's a really, really phenomenal vocal performance.
Oh, isn't it just? And also some of the most wonderful nonsense lyrics I think I've heard in anything in my life. Holy Diver, you've been down too long in the midnight sea. Oh, what's becoming of me? Ride the tiger. You can see his stripes, but you know he's clean. Oh, don't you see what I mean? Shiny diamonds, like the eyes of the cat in the black and blue. Something is coming for you. Race for the morning. You can hide in the sun till you see the light. There's obviously some religious imagery kicking across this, but it is just bizarre. I think that's the thing I love about the lyrics. They're really memorable because they're so weird. It's so good. I love the eerie intro. I think it adds to the drama when the riff hits. It's just like, it just really adds like amazing punctuation to the song. Just kicks it off in such a great way. It's so good, Alan. I don't know what else to say about it. It's like one of my favorite songs of all time.
Well, let's talk about what the lyrics are about. So, some poor bastard has tried to explain this on Genius. What is the Holy Diver? He's a diver, one who is likely not what he seems, based on the theme of the song. He sees a tiger, someone who looks evil, but he knows is good. But then another tiger, you can feel his heart, and he seems good, but he is evil. So apparently, the Holy Diver is a judge of humanity, someone who examines people for what they're truly worth. He's chased, likely by people he angers by calling them evil, thus revealing their true nature. He is hidden in the midnight sea for so long, he's losing track of himself. What is he becoming? Dio says that the tiger symbolizes strength, while its stripes suggest impurity. The lines mean you must take advantage of the strength you have and not judge the heart of others, but what seem to be impurities, these stripes in the package it comes in. Dio is saying mankind is often corrupted, while the tiger is simply an animal. The tiger doesn't want or lust or hate, it just is, and that makes it clean. Holy Diver, flee from those who oppose you. Dio does a lot of eye references. Apparently this does reference William Blake, the Blakean tiger the Holy Diver must ride, and according to interpretations of this song, they're based around the biblical book of Revelations, and the cat evokes the beast from the sea. So Dio's actually quite well read. And he's read quite a lot, and he's read quite a lot of classic fantasy and stuff, and this is why people often say Dio is like the progenitor of power metal. Because he was one of the first people to bring this kind of fantasy stuff like the Dungeons and Dragons shit into heavy metal, not the fairies and imps.
Yeah, yeah.
So he brought the Dungeons and Dragons in rather than the Tolkien in.
Mm.
If that make look, it's still fucking nonsense. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but it's catchy nonsense. So it's one of those things sometimes where it's just like, sure, I would like an artist to write something with depth and layers and meaning and stuff, but at the same time, I'm also all down for something being silly and fun. And Holy Diver is very silly, but also it's incredibly fun and catchy and features one of the greatest riffs of all time. And yeah, it's so difficult to find anything bad to say about Holy Diver. I mean, maybe the intro, but I kind of like the drama it adds to the song.
I could leave the intro because I feel like it's just 50 seconds of swirling fog noises, and it doesn't really musically connect to the rest of the song. I could drop that, but the rest of it's great. Another great solo, and like all 80s songs, it fades out. Because 80s songs never end. The band just kept playing that riff for 2 hours in real life.
Yeah. We were recently playing Guitar Hero Rocks the 80s, and it also features a version of Holy Diver where they have to invent a ending, because obviously the songs can't fade because it is a rhythm game. It needs to have a definitive ending. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting interpretation of it. Not the master recording by any means. It's a cover, but yeah, interesting version. Right then, track 3, which unfortunately has to follow up one of the greatest songs of all time. I don't think it was ever going to be in a position where it could match it or even, feel like a worthy successor. It just has to, unfortunately, be a mediocre follow-up to one of the greatest songs of all time. It is Gypsy.
You'll be ready. You'll be riding on the gypsy. On the gypsy. Where the road goes to see who's on my mind and what's within.
And yeah, I feel very sorry for it, unfortunately. Perfectly serviceable song, but it has to follow Holy Diver, which is a bit of an unfortunate position to be in. But yeah, I think it's fine. It's a nice bit of silly heavy metal fun. Lacks the truly brilliant choruses that a lot of the songs on this record really have. Very much the sort of thing you come to Dio for, though. It's lyrics about dangerous women that become more attractive because they feel so otherworldly. So yeah, that's Gypsy for you. But yeah, how did you get on with this one?
So I should have mentioned it in my pin the band on the track. Holy Diver sounds like a Black Sabbath track from. It sounds like a track off Heaven and Hell. This one sounds to me, as I'm now an Aussie, it sounds like Akadaka. It's got a real AC/DC feel to it. And I really like that this album has a lot of song variation, but there's still a lot of coherence to it. Now, this is probably not the best track in the album, and I don't think it's aged particularly well. This is representative of the kind of negative portrayals of Roma people, not only at the time, but also to today. And people, even the word gypsy is a bit of a slur these days. Look, I'm not that familiar with that community. Just that, people used it in a derogatory way when I grew up. That's as far as I know it. But, Fleetwood Mac have a song called Gypsy, and it comes into that kind of weird mysticism that people have portrayed people with. So that I feel like is unfortunate. And the fact that the song itself is merely fine. And as you say, comes after Holy Diver, which is a bit like being a local band following up Dio live on stage, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing I was going to compare it to was on Rain in Blood. The album opens with Angel of Death, and then every other song that comes after it has to now follow up Angel of Death, which is, a difficult thing to have to deal with. Luckily, that album does close with Raining Blood, so it does come back round eventually. But it's absolutely fine. But like you say, maybe the negative connotations around the word gypsy, unfortunately, drag this one down a little bit as well. Certainly not a terrible song, but nothing you're going to write home about. I would probably skip this in repeat listens, which is a shame. But there is a lot of good on this record that I can come back to over this. This is not a sign of things to come. It's just a little bit of a blip early on in the record. Should we move on to track 4, I guess? We've got Caught in the Middle.
You feel it, you see it, you feel the rush of the city lights. I feel it, I see it in your eyes. You're caught in the middle, just like the way you've always been. Caught in the middle, helpless again.
What band do you think I think this sounds like?
Oh. I'm not too sure, actually. Maybe Thin Lizzy?
That's not a bad guess. I think it sounds like Journey.
Yeah, actually, that's a good shout. Yeah.
Journey were actually a contemporary band at the time. Don't Stop Believing came out 2 years before Holy Diver, for context. So it is contemporaneous. I really like this one. I think it's got great vocal harmonies, which definitely reminds me of Journey. It's very catchy. It's cheesy. Yeah. I just think it's really fun.
I think the chorus elevates this one personally. I think it's a really, really catchy chorus. Definitely better than Gypsy. But I think for me personally, the riff doesn't exactly hit. It's more of a hard rock song than heavy metal. But yeah, it's perfectly decent song. Like I had a good time with the chorus in particular, but I just don't feel like it's hitting the highs with the riff, unfortunately. There are some great riffs across this record. This isn't one of the best, but it's fine. It does the job, does exactly what it's going for. Again, a little bit more like song variety, which is kind of cool. Like like you say, you're comparing each of these different bands, and it just goes to show you like the breadth of influences that Dio is bringing across this record is quite wide, actually. So yeah, it's nice to experience this record in its entirety because it's just so varied and interesting to listen to. And this is another one that doesn't really sound like anything that's come prior to it. You know, it's kind of cool in that regard. But yeah, very fun, very catchy, but ultimately doesn't compare to this album's high points for me, I think.
Fair, very fair.
Anything you want to add before we talk about Don't Talk to Strangers?
No, not really. Not really.
Don't dream of women, 'cause they'll only bring you down. Hey you know me, you touch me.
Well, let's do it. I think this is a bit of a sleeper hit, to be honest with you. Dio's voice is actually amazing at the start of this song. Like, he shows some real depth of, like, melody. Like, he's not... He sings quite, like, aggressively, quite loud and abrasive in places. But, you know, he's got a lot of melody to his voice. Whereas at the start here, it's a lot more subdued. You can actually, like, hear how talented he is as a vocalist. Lovely sort of folky acoustic intro. But then when that drop hits, what a fucking elevation. I love it when all the instrumentation comes in. I think it becomes this really fun sort of gallopy heavy metal track. Another outstanding solo on this one too, has to be mentioned. And yeah, I love the way it comes back around to the original melody from the intro during the sort of outro section of the song. It's just a wonderfully composed piece of music. It feels like a real highlight. It's not one you often see people talk about, and I think, like I say, I think it's a bit of a sleeper, to be honest with you. I think it has really grown on me the more I've listened to this record.
So this one, the band I would describe as Ironwood Mac Maiden. It's and it although I think the latter is mainly that you described as that chugging riff. I'd probably describe it as riding a horse across a desert, Iron Maiden style.
Totally. Yeah, no, I can hear that a lot.
And it's really interesting in the beginning. I don't know what's going on. There's like a strange vocal effect where he says "hell." It's
I'm
weird.
wondering if he's double tracked something.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Like, I mean, he loves his weird sounds and synth. There
are weird bits in it. But yeah, you've got this Fleetwood Mac intro. and then it settles into an Iron Maiden vibe. It's an amazing vocal showcase for Dio because he sort of starts off in falsetto, then he goes into he brings a bit more heat with the "Bring You Down," where he gets that really heated delivery, and then he brings in more operatic cleans near the end. He's got an amazing vocal range, and he can pull off everything very comfortably. Another noodly solo is very enjoyable. It's just something about a tapped metal solo that Van Halen style solo is really hard to beat.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Like, yeah, it's one of those things where you hear it and it's just like, oh yeah, absolutely, perfect positioning, just, you know, really effective. Like, just heightens the song, just elevates the drama of the whole thing. Yeah, I think "Don't Talk to Strangers" is a fantastic song. Another really good song on this record that just doesn't really get discussed, you know, in the same sort of breadth as like "Holy Diver" or "Rainbow in the Dark." You know, I would highly recommend giving this a listen if you've never listened to the album in full. I think this is another track that deserves to be spoken about in the same breath as those other two. So yeah, good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, track 6, "Straight Through the Heart."
But wearing your emotions on your sleeve, and they all know what you feel. And here it comes again, straight through the heart. Straight through the heart.
So there's a bit of hard rock swagger in this one. This one reminds me of like Motley Crue or something like that. Obviously better than Motley Crue, but the instruments all have a real strut to them. There's like a really good sense of attitude. And what I like about this is there's quite a lot of space for the drum fills. You get that, you get that call and response almost where Dio's doing his thing, and then you get the little drum fills in between the bits. I love that. Dio uses the words eyes and lies a lot. He really likes to talk about the eyes, the shiny diamond eyes, but he also uses the word lies a lot. And apparently this song is about the band's sound engineer, and he was always in romantic turmoil, according to Dio, and the song originally could have been called "Right Up Your Ass." Now, personally, I prefer "Straight Through the Heart." I think that's a better name for the song.
I think so too.
But this one's really good. It's like both vulgar and respectable at the same time. It's quite a good balancing act.
Yeah, I think it's a nice return of the sort of mid-paced stompy track. It's similar to "Holy Diver" in that respect. And yeah, it's not as good as "Holy Diver," but I still think it's a good song in its own right. I love the main riff. I think the chorus is super catchy as well. Another really good solo on this as well. It's another great track. Like honestly, it's one of those things with this record. I think because the singles are so well known and so memorable that when you actually explore the album a little bit more, like you realize that they were just firing on all cylinders while they were writing this record. There's some outstanding tracks across this, like real deep cuts that nobody really talks about. And again, like "Straight Through the Heart," I feel is another one of those. It's very much, you know, akin to "Holy Diver." It's probably the most signature sound on this record, that sort of mid-paced stompy track. But like, it's still offering something different, but very much, you know, offering the thing that Dio does well. Great melodies, amazing vocal performance, really like nice stompy riffs, just a lot of fun, and it's all punctuated by another great solo. It's just, it's difficult to complain about. I'm a big fan of "Straight Through the Heart" as well.
One thing I didn't mention in the intro is that a couple of weeks ago we finally got to see Bellicore live in Sydney.
You did.
After I moved here in 2017, went onto the Bellicore Facebook page, said, "Hey, when are you guys playing Sydney?" And they were like, "We literally just toured."
Oh no!
and then there was this little pandemic that happened. So
yeah,
they were sold out in the Crow Bar in Sydney, and we got to see them. Excellent gig. But I've now found my new favorite rock bar in Sydney.
Oh yeah,
and
there you go.
This is the kind of stuff that they play in rock bars.
Yep.
Straight Through the Heart by Dio.
There we go.
I don't know if they actually played it, but that is the kind of thing you want to hear in a metal bar.
Oh, there you go.
I think it's perfect soundtrack to playing Adam's Family Pinball, and while the smell of steel beer overwhelms you.
Interestingly, when I used to drink, my favourite bar in London was the Crowbar as well. And they had a big jukebox full of metal and stuff as well, and yeah, that was basically what attracted me to it. Always
Did they have Adam's Family Pinball?
It didn't have any pinball. It was a pokey little place, to be honest with you, fella. Like, there was no room for a bloody pinball table. I tell you that much. But yeah, unfortunately gone now because the pandemic hit that one a bit too hard. But yeah, halcyon days of the times, the before times, before I gave up the drink. But yeah, right. Track 7 is Invisible.
She had 13 years of teenage tears, never a helping hand. She had 14 more of a rain before she saw the sight of land. She was a photograph just ripped in half, a smile inside a frown. And then the light, the answer right inside her coming down. Yes, sir.
This one's weird at the start, yeah.
I feel like this is a bit aptly titled because I always kind of forget about this song.
It's got so this one was a hard one to pin the band on. It's got proggy, space rocky vibes at the beginning of it, which almost reminds me a little bit like Pink Floyd or something like that. And at this point in the album, I thought, isn't the song mix just terrific? I love the sound of drums being played in an aircraft hangar.
Yeah,
that echoey reverb sound. It's If you want to know what I'm talking about very precisely, is the Police have the ultimate drums in the aircraft hangar sound, especially like Regatta de Blanc. I really like when. This is the early 80s. Bands are just discovering stereo or something. So the drums have to loop around your head. There has to be some kind of stereo panning going on.
It's kind of funny.
And then it just quickly settles into a very similar groove to Straight to the Heart, but not quite as good.
Yeah. It's a strange one. Like,
returns.
Yeah, I feel like it tries to pull the same thing as Don't Talk to Strangers with its sort of delicate ballady intro. But when the full instrumentation hits, it just falls a little flat because the chorus is just so forgettable on this one. It's there's no real like...
Beep, invisible.
There's
weird,
nothing to it, is there? It's not great. Like, considering like how great some of the choruses across this record, just amazing vocal performances from Dio. Like, what is going on here? It's just like, I've got a word, better say it.
And I do think it's got another mega solo, and Dio's lyrics are quite good. They're not too cheesy. They're a good mix of like sing along and sincerity, and it was interesting that it's not the best description of a gay person ever, but it's pretty sympathetic for the 80s. Yeah. Considering this is pre-AIDS crisis, so fair play to Dio. Dio has a reputation for really wanting to bring in all the lost children into the world of heavy metal, I think he has that be excellent to each other metal vibe.
Totally. I think
so. He really personifies that. Like when you go to a metal gig and you're in the mosh pit, people help you back up, and we're all there to have a good time, take care of each other. He kind of personifies that.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. He's super loved as a figure in metal, absolutely, and you can tell it's because he's just so approachable. I remember reading one of the things like, the year he died. I used to read Metal Sucks quite a lot, and one of the writers on there said like they saw him after his cancer diagnosis, and sort of shouted at him like "get well soon" and stuff, and he proper did turn around. Acknowledge that like someone had said some nice words to him and threw him the horns and stuff, which was really lovely. Like, it's just nice little messages about that. We haven't even spoken about the horns actually. Like Dio's kind of
he invented the horns.
Guy. He's the boy that used the original the metal salute essentially. So
and the whole story of the horns is that he like all good Italian boys learned it from his nonna.
There we go.
She used to do it to like a ward off the devil kind of sign. So he says that he's appropriated a traditional Italian matriarch signal and turned it into the metal sign. So I thought as someone who has a nonna, you would appreciate that.
Absolutely, I would indeed. I do indeed, absolutely. Oh no, that's fantastic. I didn't realize that was where it stemmed from. That's really cool.
I'm pretty sure Jess's nonna would throw the horns up quite happily. she's pretty metal for a 98-year-old.
Oh mate, both our nonnas. Goddamn, it's still going strong. Oh, good stuff. That's really lovely to hear. Right then, ring the bell. It's the back off banger.
Hey, okay. Ding ding ding.
Back half banger.
It's Rainbow in the Dark.
So this is the only one that I had heard before, apart from Holy Diver.
Yeah, it's pretty iconic as Dio songs go, isn't it? Like, I think it's kind of hard to not have been exposed to this if you're into metal. So, interesting story about this one. Dio nearly completely scrapped it.
Yes, I watched the interview earlier today. Everybody said he absolutely hated it, and the band begged him not to destroy the masters.
Yeah, he was apparently about to take a knife to the tapes, and they begged him to not, and he felt it was too poppy, not metal enough. He didn't want to, have his debut solo record have a pop song on it, essentially, and basically lose his following. He didn't really want to lose the core audience that have really stuck with him, his metal fans and that. But yeah, I'm glad he didn't, because regardless of whether or not it's catchy and it's got that synth riff that really, is quite the iconic melody on this, I think there is some really metal stuff going on. The actual riff going on underneath the synth is super growly and like I love that noise.
So this to me, this reminds me of Ozzy Osbourne's solo stuff. It's got a very Randy Rhoads vibe, that guitar.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. No, that's a good shout. I can hear that completely now that you said it. That definitely matches up with the timeline.
It's definitely got a Crazy Train kind of growliness to it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, I really like the guitar work underneath the synth. I think it's it's almost like polar opposites to the lovely, melody that's really high up in the mix. But then you got this really growly sort of grungy sound underneath, which is really fun. It's great juxtaposition. I think it works really well together. It's the song though, right? It's a seminal piece of hard rock royalty as far as I'm concerned. Really good stuff. Dio works his magic on the vocals, giving it absolutely everything. Singing about rainbows, which is a big thing for Dio.
Well, this is meant to be
stem back to
the
his
rainbow.
Days, right?
The rainbow in the dark. That is meant to be the thing that keeps you going when you're at your lowest.
Yeah.
That's what's your rainbow in the dark? That's what it's meant to be about. I know it sounds a bit random, but that's apparently what it's about.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it's a much more easy to understand metaphor than some of the stuff that's going on in Holy Diver. Let's put it that way. But yeah, it's just great fun. Dio does talk about rainbows quite a lot across his discography, and I would hazard a guess it's a little bit of a throwback to him being in Rainbow. It's the thing that kind of broke him in his music career and brought him the most of his fans, I think. Next to obviously Black Sabbath as well. But yeah, great stuff. I think I love that he sings about rainbows as well, because it's just very, again, it's one of those things where it's I know he probably didn't mean to be super inclusive of people from LGBTQ communities or anything like that, but it definitely comes across that way with a bit of hindsight. It's very much I'm using that imagery, and it feels like it makes him more approachable as an artist. It doesn't feel like a metal artist that you get any sort of resistance from. It's no, Dio kind of wants to welcome you into the fold. If you're a bit of a weirdo or off the beaten path, or follow a lifestyle that isn't traditional, you're welcome as long as you enjoy the music. That's pretty cool as far as I'm concerned. I'm a big fan of the sort of stompy bit before and after the solo as well. It sort of punctuates like the solos come in and then it sort
rock
of like
section.
ends it as well. I think that's a right nice bit of drama. Seminal as far as I'm concerned. It's another absolute highlight across this record.
Do you mean seminal as in you come in your pants when you hear it, or just that it is a particularly good song?
Particularly good song. Thank you, Alan. But yeah, there's nothing more I can add to it. It's another one of those perfect tracks, and to have 2 on an album, like, you know, it's just. Man was absolutely firing on all cylinders. It's brilliant stuff. Right then, it's a bit of a short one, isn't it? Album closer already at track 9.
Well, look, this is how they used to make them. You know, it used to be in the vinyl days. Only had about 35, 40 minutes, so it's all.
As far as I'm aware, I think 33 RPM, 12-inch, you got about 45-minute max, basically. So yeah.
So it's in and it's out, and we're not going. Could have dropped this. Could have dropped that. You know, it's like, are you really going to skip? Are you going to get up to your record player and bump past Gypsy? No, you're not going to bother because it's 3 minutes out of a 40.
Once that's over, you get a good song. So it's just one of those things, isn't it? Right then, so album closer, Shame on the Night.
For places I've been and what I've seen, for giving me the strangest dreams, but you never let me know just what they mean. And so shame on the night. All right. Shame on you.
So this one's got quite a. I haven't pinned. This is the only one I haven't pinned a band on.
Okay.
It's got, and probably because I think it's a little bit forgettable, honestly. Now, it's got a bit of a bluesy feel to the intro. It's not a bad song. It just doesn't really stand out among the pack. And as you say, Rainbow in the Dark is such a rainbow in the dark that it's like he's dropped an atomic bomb on the album, and nothing's going to be able to follow that. And so maybe if I had heard that before Rainbow in the Dark in the track listing, then that wouldn't be a back half banger. That'd be a, I don't know, back half clincher. I don't know what that is.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of how I feel about it. I think the heavy intro is quite fun. There's a bit of backmasking at the end, just in case you were confused about whether this was indeed an 80s metal album. Saying Crucify the Diver, backmasked. But I haven't really got a lot to say about it.
My first comment is, I mean, it's fine. It's another slower, stompier track. I don't hate it, but it just doesn't have the riffs or the vocal melodies to make it a real classic, you know? It just sort of trudges along and brings the album to sort of a lurching close. I do quite like that last riff, and I do like the R's, you know, like it gives it a bit of like drama and a bit of gravitas during that last moment. But that's the only thing I'd really say that really sort of helps save it in a weird way. Like, the rest of the song just sort of comes and goes, and it doesn't really leave much of an impact, unfortunately, which is a shame when, you know, the album has been pretty solid up until this point, you know. And again, like, it's not bad. It's not a bad song. There's nothing egregiously offensive about it. It's just like, I can do without this, you know, like, so yeah, it's another one of those things where, like, you probably wouldn't get up to skip it, but you would just be like, it's no Rainbow in the Dark, is it? But then it had to follow Rainbow in the Dark, so it was never going to be. So yeah, another one of those things where it's diminishing returns, unfortunately. If you come out with a banger, then unfortunately the song that has to follow it does kind of have to suffer a little bit, unfortunately. But yeah, that is Dio's Holy Diver. How did you feel on the whole when we listened to this for the first time?
Oh, I felt invigorated. Like they really don't make them like this anymore. I think it's short, it's punchy, it's varied, and what's really interesting is it just relies on confident songwriting and really good tunes rather than virtuoso playing. It's not most of the apart from the guitar solos. There's nothing particularly technically outstanding going on here. It's just simply really, really good songwriting with the band gels. They're working as a unit, and I really enjoyed my time with it, and it led me onto a massive Rainbow and Black Sabbath binge. Checked out a bit of Ozzy Osbourne solo stuff, and it's actually the newest album's not that bad for a guy who's 50% drugs in his bloodstream.
I know he's been using, like co-collaborators for a lot of his writing for the last few records now, which is understandable considering the
he's also
situation
got. I mean, Ozzy's got Parkinson's and he's auto-tuned to fuck in some of those albums. But, you gotta take what you can get. But I've never been a massive Ozzy solo fan. Apart from all, it's kind of like Dio. It's all the ones you've heard, like Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, and Bark at the Moon. It's just probably Bark at the Moon's probably his Rainbow in the Dark. They pretty much came out the same year, I think. So it's it's a similar kind of thing, and that's what was really nice to go in and listen to a whole Dio album. And even like Jess and I were listening to it in the car this morning. She's like, I don't think I've ever listened to all of this album, and I'm sure a lot of people have not. So
definitely.
My final thoughts are, if you have not listened to this album in its entirety, don't be that person. And and also give Last in Line a spin, because it's really good too, and has an even more high octane opening track.
Oh God, and it just
we rock.
Oh, that's an amazing song. And again, like, it almost follows the same sort of pattern as the way Holy Diver presents its first two songs, in that, like, We Rock is a big, like, balls to the wall, like, doesn't, like, muck about, gets all its ideas on the paper very quickly. And then it has a more, like, epic, big, mid-paced, stompy track to follow it with, which is the title track of the album. Like, very similar in their structure. And it's such an effective 1-2 on both records, I would highly recommend you go and listen to The Last in Line as well. I was going to suggest it as further listening, but I picked something that Alan also picked as well.
Oh, how did we know? How do we know, dear listeners? It's like we confer before the show. So we have both picked Rainbows Rising. It's got 6 songs. It is 33 minutes. It's an absolute classic, and it's got an outstanding performance by Dio. And it also has it has a track that I had not heard until I started listening for this, but I had heard the Dream Theater cover of, which is Stargazer, which is on. It makes sense now. Having said that, doesn't it? The Dream Theater would cover that.
Yep. I'm pretty sure Metallica have also covered Stargazer. The most recent record, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, has like a bonus track on it called Ronnie Rising Medley, which features an awful lot of just Dio stuff mashed into one big song, and I think Stargazer is part of it, but there's a fair few tracks that are covered in that one medley. Really good stuff, actually. In fact, I would say that is probably the best production on a Metallica song I've ever heard, because you can really hear the bass. And Lars Ulrich isn't front of the bloody mix like he is in everything. It's a really good little track.
But if only for Stargazer, that is like a lot of these bands are, that Rainbow album is essentially a prototypical prog metal, right?
Yeah. Before we go on to our second recommendations, we didn't even do our favourite track on the album.
Oh, okay. Because we know what it is. What was your second favourite? Okay, right. Okay. Now let me think about this. Let me think. What was your favourite track on the album that was not Holy Diver or Rainbow in the Dark? Because those are clearly the top two. I think your third favourite, might be. Is it Don't Talk to Strangers?
Yeah, it's Talking to Strangers. Absolutely. Yeah. No, totally. I think yours. Straight Through the Heart. Yeah, that's fair. Again, it's the correct choices, right? And then obviously
those are the correct answers. I really enjoy Caught in the Middle as well. I think that's the top tier. And we almost forgot about Stand Up and Shout, but it's also top tier. And then you've got the others.
Absolutely. No, agree completely. Like, again, that's just so many good songs on this record. Like, there's probably 2 duds across the entire thing. Like, that's pretty heavy going. And to say either Holy Diver or Rainbow in the Dark isn't the best song on the album is wrong. So you can chop and change between the two as far as I'm concerned. But like, if you want metal, you go for Holy Diver. If you want seriously memorable, catchy songs, then you go to Rainbow in the Dark. So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, Holy Diver is also a very memorable song, but it offers something quite different to Rainbow in the Dark.
Holy Diver is like Nokia ringtone grade. When you had to type in, you had to manually type it in your 3210.
You could get that riff out of a Nokia phone, totally.
Holy Diver's right up there with like Pampa Roach's Last Resort and CKY's 96 Quite Bitter Beings. It's like people are going to type this in. You know what I'm talking about. You grew up in the 90s.
Big riffs, man. Big riffs, totally. Right then, let's finish off our further listing. So I picked as my second choice another Dio fronted band. It is Heaven and Hell's The Devil You Know, which was the last thing he recorded before his passing, unfortunately. But it is an amazing swan song. It is basically the Dio era Sabbath lineup reforming under a different name because Sabbath had become a working band again with Ozzy as their frontman. So yeah, it made sense to differentiate the two. But it is basically Sabbath in all but name. It is a thunderous, extremely doomy, riff-heavy record that I would highly recommend. Some absolute bangers across it, and Iommi is firing on all cylinders.
Well, I was going to ask. So it actually is. It actually is. Oh yeah, it is. It's Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler. Wow.
Yeah. There you go. So it's the lineup of Heaven and Hell, the album, but as a new band. So yeah, it's incredible. It's an amazing record. I would highly recommend. I would say Dio's lyricism on that record isn't his strongest. It definitely sounds like he wrote all those songs in the studio very quickly, but his performance on vocally is still incredible. Bible Black is an absolutely outstanding track that really showcases how his range and at such a at that age as well, he shouldn't really be performing that well. He kept his voice incredibly looked after, and yeah, I would highly recommend you go and check out The Devil You Know. It is an amazing swan song to an amazing career. Alan, your second pick.
So I was trying to think, what is the... I'm just adding that album to my Apple Music. Done. Okay. I was trying to think of what is a contemporary to this that I think captures that old school hard rock heavy metal songwriting. And the best thing I could come up with an answer was Ghost.
That's a fair point, yeah.
And I think Ghost are very much influenced by a lot of those hard rock bands. Again, they have really talented musicians. The Nameless Ghouls, who are usually suing Tobias Forge for royalties.
Yeah.
So the Ghost album I've picked is Meliora, which I think is probably their best. Very catchy, got a bit of like synth and organ in there. Yep. Just a good time. And Papa Emeritus is nowhere near as good a singer as Dio, but who is? But I think that captures the metal theatrics, the Satan baiting, the satanic Pope imagery and stuff. I think it's probably a good continuation of that kind of style of classic heavy metal, and
that's a really solid choice. Yeah,
and Ghost have their latest album I really enjoy, but it's very different. They're getting into like stadium rock territory. They get more
their trajectory as a band has been nothing but getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I suppose it was inevitable.
And I liked it, and the Elder Council of the Brothers all really enjoyed it as well. I think Meliora was probably the best balance between still being a metal record. I think I saw them in the Meliora tour. It was very good, very good.
Good stuff.
Fun live performance. So that's my other recommendation.
That's a really solid pick. Thank you very much for bringing something a little bit more modern, and that isn't just Dio fronted band.
Have you heard of Dio? What about the Tenacious D song Dio? He does appear in the Pick of Destiny. He does. He appears in the was it Kickapoo, the first track?
It's a really great little performance, actually.
It is. I think that was one of the aside from Holy Diver, I was like, oh yeah, Dio. He's rocked for a long time, and now it's about time to pass the torch.
I think that like willingness to poke fun at himself is quite endearing about him as well. I really like that about him. He's just aware of. I guess I am a bit of a silly person, but hey, let's play it up. Good man.
I looked up The Devil You Know on the Sputnik Music Review. Someone described Ronnie James Dio as somewhat of an Italian Bilbo Baggins.
That's an amazing comparison. Brilliant stuff. Well, we've come to the close of another Cast Iron. Thank you very much for joining me as always, Alan. That was a great time. I very much enjoyed talking about a bit of 80s hard rock classic. That is Dio's Holy Diver. If you are keen to support us, please do. Please rate and review us on Apple Music. It helps us expose us to more people and gets the word out, and very much we would like to reach more people. So thank you very much for your support as always. Everything you need, castironshow.co.uk is the home base. There's additional material there. Been publishing my appearances on various other podcasts, and also my solo music material as well on there. So if you want to see what we're up to, check out the blog as well. But our entire back catalogue is there. Lovely display, lovely layout, and just
it usually works. Yeah, I think the website works now. Yeah, but despite my attempts to break it.
But yeah, if you do want to keep in touch, that's the place to be. We're also on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Cast Iron Show is where you need to go if you want to catch up with us directly. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in as always. Alan, had a great time talking about Dio with you. I hope you have a lovely evening. Newly
anointed,
anointed Aussie.
Newly sworn in.
Exactly. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in as always, and we will catch you all next time. Take care.
Take care. It's been a pleasure. Bye.